So this is going to be a bit of a repeat for the people that came to the session. Thank you, everybody who took part. We basically did sort of two exercises. The first one was like a high level ranking of, I don't know, needs or assets or whatever. What are the things that councils have been working on for LGR and how do we as a community respond to that? And then the second one was sort of drilling into like, what do you need for your website? So I'll go through both of them. If I click this, it's going to move forward. No, it's all right. So at a high level, we basically needed these things to a greater or lesser extent, and we basically did a ranking of that in the room. Um, and the first two, committee management, intranet, veneer, um, people were saying we actually need these before vesting day in some form or another, because we'll have shadow councillors and we'll have colleagues that are not necessarily employed by the new councils, but they need to be communicated in that way. So some kind of committee and intranet sort of infrastructure, even though they're not finished products. And happily, we're working on both. So, I mean, the upshot of this is we're working on all of it, but we are working on those. There are community fund projects for both. So if you're interested in that, then do give us a shout. Um, the website veneer stuff. Does everyone know what I mean by veneer? So basically, sort of branded, glossy, thin layer of content that describes what your council is about, and maybe some of the top tasks that your new councils will accomplish. That signpost out to legacy sites because you haven't got time to move all of that content and transactions. That seems to be the LGR pattern, like how content is moved. So something that provides a veneer that has some kind of flexible publishing capability is a good thing. Tell me if I need to go faster, Aaron. We'll talk more about this in a second. We need something around hosting and deployment best practice. We obviously don't need to host your websites, but we need to talk about what other councils have done, how better to do it, how to put yourself in a flexible place so you can make the most of that. And then the final thing, not last but not least, your new authorities will need to do consultations. Maybe it's not the first thing you need to do, but it is something that you'll need to do sort of early on in your new authority's life. And happily, there's a project already for that that's been run by WebCurl, I think funded by Warsaw recently. So we are going to cover all of these things. And people said there wasn't really, from a publishing sense, there wasn't anything major that was missing. Obviously, there's more to LGR than publishing. There's lots of other bits of software you need. But in terms of what you need from LGD, I think this covers it. If it doesn't, let us know. And then just sort of quickly onto the sort of drill down further into the website veneer stuff. So we think some of this has been done, but there's a few gaps that we need to fill. So certainly from my perspective and the people in the room, we think that LGD largely out of the box provides the ability to create new branded pages and lots of different content formats. That's where we're really strong. That you can set up AI certainly on your new site. Whether you can do it on your legacy site is another question, but we're not letting you down there. Like, that's flexible. You can do a lot with local Drupal already. The areas that we want to do some work is on site search across all of your legacy sites, not just local Drupal. And there were lots of so there's a big difference of opinion from why don't you just do it with Google free search, which I think, Finn, you'll come out in hives if I say that again. We You can do, but like maybe there are better solutions. So by Includo, to why don't we prototype this as a community? And that's definitely what we're going to do next for search. We're going to see how we could best satisfy this need for everybody. Next one up is postcode prompts, which has already been built by Cumberland, or Cumbria as it was at the time. A user's challenge for their postcode, they put that in, or town, Finn tells me, or your local town. And then it'll direct you to the content that's most appropriate for you. So some of that already exists. We just need to kind of get it out of the box and understand it a bit better and provide it for the people that need it. And then the final thing really we're going to work on is how do you do rebranding of legacy sites? So there's a module Finn was telling me about called Drupal Style Guide that will basically publish a page that has all the common theming stuff that your Drupal site have. We think that's probably the best place to start with this. So it's a URL you can send to suppliers, to other to other CMSs, to Civica Pay, those kind of folks. Brand the new site like this Drupal site is kind of the instruction you would give. And hopefully it would make your life a bit easier. So I think that's where we're going to start with that one. Nobody was really up for doing interim form and case management because you probably have enough of that already. If anyone does, then do let us know. And nobody really could think of anything else major. outside of this list. So this is definitely what we're going to focus on. So as I say, the next steps are we'll get an LGR demo site with all of this running. We'll try and work on this search prototype and get postcode prompts running so you can see all of that. We're not going to do a big working group for this, although LGR therapy is available. If you need it, just come and ask. There's a Slack channel you can join. We will publish updates on this at intervals. We'll share URLs to work that's in progress. So I think that's where we've come out. Is that okay, Aaron?
Lovely. Yeah. So I think without further ado, let's hear from Jamie. So I mean, Jamie, you're probably best to introduce the context for what you're going to show us.
Yeah.
But you're going to show us essentially a day one website for a new unitary authority. Over to you.
Yeah, so I'm not going to do too much of the talking because my colleague Billy's here and he heads up kind of our dev and UX team. So he's going to actually show what they've been working on. But
Cool.
in terms of what we're going to show, just to kind of set the scene, we've been working with a number of different county councils to talk about, like Will just said there, what they need from day one, like a digital front door, or I actually like the term veneer a little bit better. But so for the purpose of today, what Billy's going to show is what we've been working on for councils that need a new authority website that still connects to their legacy websites, but still makes it really easy for residents to find what they're looking for. If you just go to the next slide, Bill, there's a couple of different things we'll show. Obviously, different councils are at different places in their journey of LGR, but also, as we know, with their systems internally, some have a really mature, quite rich data set for GIS and spatial data, and some don't. So what we'll show is kind of what we're working on out the box with LGD, and we'll be working with Tim on. But then we've also gone a little bit further and done some GIS integrations with a few councils. So you don't actually have to leave the site to be redirected to the legacy site. You can actually get the information pulling through. Similar with search. So yeah, we'll show what's kind of out of the box of LGD, but then also where we can actually push resident experience a little bit further if we have the ability to integrate with GIS data or conversational assistance, for example. Everything we show we've been working on and we'll be committed back as a module. But I'll hand over to Billy to give you the kind of the run through.
Perfect. Thanks, Jay. Okay, let me just share this screen. So welcome to our LGR transition demo site. So this is Westshire Council, completely fictional, and it's made up of 4 councils within that unitary. So as Jamie kind of touched on, we've got a few different scenarios to run through today. We've split it up into 3 key sections with 1 bonus section if we get time. The first being how we can handle navigational services, similar to what Will was talking about there in terms of being a bit of a veneer, and also showing how the whole postcode lookup piece could potentially be done. Secondly, we'll be looking at conversational support. Obviously, conversational agents and conversational support in general is a growing trend, and just looking a little bit at how we might handle that from an LGR perspective. We then have search, so we talk a little bit about that, and then if we get time, content assistant. So first and foremost, I'll jump into the navigational side. Obviously, the important thing here is that the residents getting to the correct service area efficiently. And we're approaching this as more of a mechanism. By the way, you can ignore the actual content on this site. It's made up of some random content. So it's more the functionality that we're looking at. We've split this into 2 approaches. So for example, if I just come to here and I click on services, what you'll see at the top of the screen is the ability to enter your postcode. So if I enter a postcode, I can then click view those council services. Based on that postcode, it's picking up that I'm from Ashworth Council, and it's then listing these services specifically for that council at a very high level. The idea is that these cards would then link directly to that service page on the Ashforth Council website. So that's the idea behind that. And then the second idea is whether or not you go 1 level deeper than that. And let's assume that we're specifically looking at planning, and we can do the exact same thing. And it starts to pull through some more lower level pages within that specific area to help signpost people to the correct website. Of course, if you don't have, sorry, Will, did you have your hand up?
So two things to add, because I'm just learning more and more about this stuff all the time. So Finn said earlier, not just postcode, but town.
Yeah.
He heard that from North Yorks, I think, because people don't necessarily know the postcode, but it's definitely on the right track already. The thing I heard from, I think it was Cumberland, that so there were some councillors, some shadow councillors, who didn't want the names of the old councils mentioned. So like there was like a ban on those names. So
Yeah.
on the page that you had previously, you'd have to go, I'm a resident in place, rather than name of place, rather than, which when you think about it, it's slightly bizarre, but that's the world that we live in. So
Absolutely, 100%.
hopefully that wasn't recorded. Maybe we just delete this bit. Sorry.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Will. Yeah, 100%. And we will actually I'll show another slightly different user experience here, where you're selecting your town rather than inputting a postcode. But that's some concepts there from a pure navigational perspective. Next, I'm going to move onto conversational. So Jamie touched on this in his intro, but everything we're showing you here today in regards to AI is absolutely a service that we provide, but everything that we're showing is a module that will be contributed back into the community, as well as the AI flows that I'm showing here today will be available as open source. So you're able to do everything that I'm showing you here today completely separately to us. We're just showing it within our platform. So within here, from a conversational perspective, what you'll see is essentially a chatbot in the bottom right-hand corner. What I'll do is just blow this up so it's bigger for everybody. And what we're looking at here is how you could potentially handle LGR using conversational support. Conversational support in general is obviously an increasing trend and is estimated to be a bit of a majority user experience by 2027. So in terms of the ways that we could potentially use this to help us with LGR, I have 3 different options in here. So I'm just going to append option 1, option 2, etc. Before this, so I can demo it. But if I say, when are my bins being collected? In this option, we have set this up to be integrated directly with the backend system. So what we're able to do here is ask the user for their postcode, for example. And based on that, we are able to directly pull back the actual information for that specific council. So what this will be able to do is tell me exactly when my bin is being collected, and the user didn't need to leave the unitary site at all in order to get that information. So that will come back and tell me that it's scheduled for every Tuesday, for example, and it will also give me a link off to go and see that information for myself as well. The second option we have, if I just clear this chat, otherwise it will remember my postcode. Second option here is without using any kind of postcode integration. We can ask the user what area they're from. So instead of asking them for their postcode, we could just ask them for their area, or give them a list of areas to choose from, and they just have to respond with their area. And in this case, we can signpost them to the correct page to go and access that information. Option 3 is my least favorite, and you'll see why in a second. But option 3 is where we don't ask the user for any information. So instead of asking the user for their information, we just provide them with all the information and give them the option to go and choose where they want to go. So it would come back with the the information for each of the 4 councils within the unitary, and they're able to choose which one they want to go and see. And that's done essentially by indexing all four of the council's website information and then integrating with any backend systems that we need to. Obviously understand that the backend integration can get really tricky if different councils are using different systems, etc. So hence having the different options to be able to kind of handle it in different ways. And hopefully that makes sense. I will jump straight into search. So Will was touching on this a little bit. We've come up with kind of a potential solution here, more so for AI search than the actual search results themselves. Agree in terms of the challenges around what software you would use in order to index all 4 of the council sites, for example, starts to get really tricky. From an AI perspective, though, what we're able to do is, for example, if I just go back here and I search for bins, for example, what we're able to do here is actually allow the user to select where they're from at this point. So if they were to select Ashforth, for example, the AI search overview will then be specific to Ashforth. So very similar to what we do within the chat experience, the conversational experience, we're able to index all 4 of the council websites. And once that user makes that selection, we're then able to pull back the relevant information from the search query based on that specific council. And that's how we would probably recommend it was done from an AI search perspective. In terms of the actual search results, I believe we could do something similar. We'll mention Cluedo, for example, but that's not something we've gone into detail just yet. And just conscious of time, so I'll jump straight into the final piece. Just something else that we've been working on, which can tie into this whole world of LGR, as well as kind of using AI to help support LGR. What we've implemented is an AI content reviewer. So when you're within CK Editor 4, I believe, CK Editor, we've integrated it into anyway. And whatever text is in that content field, you're able to review that content based on a number of different reports. Now we support readability, accessibility, GDS, your own council's guidelines, but then also AI readiness. So if AI is a key user experience for you in terms of handling LGR, being able to report on your content in terms of AI readiness is something that this AI can do. So for example, here it's given you a bit of a summary in terms of how AI would read that content and summarize that content, as well as give you suggested fixes to potentially make that content more readable by an AI. I've rattled through that fairly quickly, but hopefully that gives people some food for thought. And if you want to chat some more, feel free to reach out.
I think it's probably worth just saying as well, most councils are going to be in a position where they're going to focus primarily on the navigational aspect first, and it's going to be a lot of postcode lookup and signposting. So we've been exploring a number of different ways. Like, for example, some councils are speaking with thinking about just having one landing page where you have to put your postcode in on the homepage, and it updates the homepage based on targeting. So there's a couple of different options out there, but we think this is probably going to be the cleanest route.
Great stuff, Jamie. And thank you, Billy, for the demo. And also just kudos for live typing while doing a demo and getting, like, pretty much nailed all your I couldn't do that.
Thank you.
Very smooth. We've got time for some questions. So you can either raise your hand or just jump off mute or type in the chat.
I didn't raise the hand, but yeah, I just have one quick question. As ECC is also going through LGR, just a bit interested in what you have demonstrated. So are you saying that each unitary is having its own website? For example, if your main council is divided into 3 or 4 or 2 unitaries or small councils, so will each one of those is having its own website?
I think it depends on the proposals that get signed off. So like next month, and on those that have been signed off so far. But for example, in Surrey, where we are, there's going to become there's an East Surrey, and I know we've got a few Surrey colleagues on the call. There's an East Surrey and a West Surrey. So the ask initially before vesting day is that there's one website for each of those two councils, but they're able to connect to the six legacy councils' websites and pull content from there. So there'll be two websites instead of the 11 to 12 that there currently is.
Okay, two main websites, and you're pulling information for the different councils from that. Okay.
Yeah,
from
exactly.
The
And it's like a stage one, right? So once kind of there's a lot of stuff under the bonnet that councils are going to be fixing for the next few years, but eventually, I'd imagine those legacy sites will consolidate into this one main site.
Okay.
It follows like the website for Near ID that I was talking about. So we did this in Cumberland and Westmoreland. I think the people on the call from both of those. So when we were in Cumbria, we built an alpha, like an LGD alpha site. And the idea was that could become a cumberland.gov.uk website and a Westmoreland and Furness.gov.uk website. And I think that I wasn't there for that. So there'll be colleagues here who know this more than me. But I think what they ended up being is properly branded sites to represent what those councils are doing, like what they look like, what they feel like, with their new phone numbers and, you know, all the sort of corporate centre stuff that they need. And I think what they started to do was like understand what their top tasks were. You're like, I don't know if they got all the way through that, but I know that's a strategy that some councils adopt when they're going through this. It's like, what's going to make the phones ring the most? Let's try and write about that first.
Okay.
And then let's signpost through to, what's going to be the demanding stuff across the whole piece, not just for you in Essex, not just Essex, but what are your districts and boroughs? What are they all servicing? Like, so in the new authorities, what are the things that are going to be the most important? And then let's signpost through to the old sites where that's in, but like Billy is showing. And then maybe let's try and do a little bit of rebranding of that if we can. But obviously that's harder, you know, if you're not on local gov Drupal and stuff. But that's largely what these projects are about. So I imagine that will be coming down the track for you at some point. Happy to chat about that anytime.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Will, and thanks, Jamie.
I think we've got time for one more question. So we'll take a question from Andy, so that Finn's happy and we're finishing on time.
I mean, I put it in the chat as well. I was just wondering how that postcode search matches to those sub-landing pages, and if they're like tagged up. So have you actually got different sub-landing or landing pages for each of those sections per the underlying unitary? And have they just been tagged? Is that just how the postcode thing is going to the right section?
Yeah, good question. So I was actually chatting to our developer about this morning. The ideal approach would be that you essentially passing a filter directly through the URL, and it dynamically updates those services on a single landing page would be the ideal approach. However, that would require some changes and some handling of it directly within the content types as well. The other approach is to have a landing page per council, and then you just direct people to that specific landing page. Obviously, that's a bit more work from a content perspective, but those were the two approaches we were chatting through.
Okay, so the postcode search is when you put that in its current form is then sending you to a specific landing page to the matched council.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting. Thank you.
So the way we did this in Cumbria, I don't know whether it was ever kind of published in this way, but there's at a point where there's a choice that a user has to make, like they're from a particular council, they're asked for a postcode, and then what the information that's printed on the page, either there's a paragraph for each of the councils, and because we know your council A will show you paragraph A, paragraph B, paragraph C, or we'll take you through to individual nodes that relate to those councils, either on the site that you're on or the old legacy site that we want you to go to. And there was a mix, depending on what content design was done, there was a mix of strategies that allowed that to happen. But there was nothing dynamic about it. It was all like hand cranked. in this thing that we built. I think there are, like Billy says, I think there are cleverer ways of doing it than the way that we did it at the time. It was a few years ago though, so I plead. That's my excuse.
Thanks, Bill.
I think there's probably like a bit of an opportunity here to do a bit of user testing as well to see which approach we can look at it on our side, a selection of random residents to see both options from a navigational perspective. If you put your postcode in first, or if you go to the service landing page and then put your postcode in to see which ones has a higher success rate.
I'm happy to show the back end for Cumberland to see how we've done it on signposting to those legacy sites, or the postcode checker if you want to compare and take improvements from it. I'm happy to show you the back end, because we're still linking to one legacy site. We've basically migrated all 3 now, but we've still got the leftover kind of residual from that